So I thought you complete like Duolingo and then you can move on into watching, I don't know, TV in the language. And once you can do that and once you're good at that, you can then move on into speaking with people in the language. But all of these things mingle together. All of these things aren't linear. What's going on? Welcome back to this channel where today I'm in a different setup. I'm actually in a hotel room right now because I'm traveling currently. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to make videos in the next like 3 weeks or so. So I figured while I've got the chance right now, I'm going to be making this video in a hotel room. The audio is being recorded on my phone, so the audio may be not as good as like my microphone that I normally have at home. The lighting maybe is not that great either. I've got like a couple lamps up above me, window over here that's sort of lighting me from the side. And also the main thing is I've got all this space, which I don't normally have when I record my videos, but also maybe it makes it a little bit echoey. I don't really know. I wish I had all this space normally when I recorded videos. It just makes it more spacious and it makes the video look better, even though I know the framing is really weird because like the ceiling's like, I don't know, off center. But that's not important. Today I want to talk about my language learning journey with Spanish. I have previously mentioned this, but I wanted to reiterate in a video now that I've dedicated myself to being like a YouTuber who talks about languages and learning and everything of the sort. I wanted to reiterate sort of briefly my journey with Spanish and also a lot of the issues I had learning Spanish for the first like 9-10 years of me learning Spanish, what I did wrong, what I could have definitely improved upon, basically the errors that I made, and hopefully for you guys watching, whether it's Spanish or whether it's another language, that you can tell yourself, oh, actually, I'm doing the same thing, I better not do that and I better do something else to actually help me improve my language learning journey. Otherwise, you could also waste a lot of time because in essence, I wasted a lot of time, like many years, trying to learn Spanish, thinking I was learning Spanish, when in fact I wasn't even learning at all. I was learning like obviously a little bit, but it really was so slow going. And I was wondering for so many years, why did it take so long for me to even get to a certain level in Spanish? Why is it taking me so long, over 10 years, to learn Spanish and still not being able to understand or comprehend what I'm listening to? In short, I started learning Spanish in school in 2009. It was around May, June time, I think. And basically, I had my first lesson ever in Spanish in the June or May or something around that time in 2009. And it was in school. We were basically like choosing what classes we wanted to choose for the next year coming. I had my first lesson in Spanish and we just did like simple things like hola, uno, dos, tres, etc. And from doing French for like so many years into then this new language, I really actually at the time wanted to do German. I didn't personally get the option to do German just the way our school was laid out. So I had the option to do Spanish instead. And so I never heard of like anything Spanish related before really. I then took this 1 hour in this class. I heard how the language sounded to me, and at the time I really wasn't into languages that much. I was always under the assumption that I wouldn't ever really travel to these countries. I wouldn't ever need to learn these languages. So when I heard this language, I actually sort of, something clicked in its head. This sounds a lot nicer than French. This sounds, I don't know, just more like my type of thing. It sounded like I could actually get along with this language, unlike with French and the experience in school of just trying to learn a language in school in general and it just not working. That's very much what I had with French. But Spanish sounded really nice. I also had friends of mine who were choosing Spanish as well, so I could be in the same class as some of my friends. And so for the next 3 years after that, I was studying Spanish in school. I even went to Barcelona with the school as well, on like a little school trip for 4 or 5 days. And I quite enjoyed it. I can't really remember many of the lessons. I do definitely remember some bits that happened in the lessons. And as far as school went, like we watched Pan's Labyrinth, which is a Spanish film, as well as obviously doing like all the other studying that we did. It was average for like school learning language or whatever. Like it was okay. But I left school. I had, I think, I don't know, a D maybe in Spanish. Like it basically wasn't that great. Other people I knew had better grades, other people had worse grades. And I really wanted to just continue with this because I always had it in mind that I've gone this far, I've gone from like 0 to this far in Spanish so far, and I want to continue my path of learning. I then discovered there were such things as like apps and that kind of thing. I literally had no idea what I was doing. So I didn't know how to self-study whatsoever. I looked it up. This was 2012 when I left school and I was a bit clueless. What do I do? And I found like Memrise, and I remember finding Duolingo. They were the only 2 apps available at the time. I think there was also others, but you had to pay for them, like Rosetta Stone, which is just terribly expensive. I never never even had the money to even afford Rosetta Stone. I never heard anything good about it either. So I stuck with Duolingo and Memrise, mostly Duolingo. Memrise here or there. I still occasionally use Memrise, but not so much. So for like a year or two, I continued studying Spanish, self-studying. I tried to go to college studying Spanish, couldn't do it because it wasn't offered in the college that I went to. I ended up doing media studies instead. But me trying to self-study Spanish, it was going so slowly. I didn't know what I was doing. I really was trying to just self-study the language as much as I could. I tried to put in as much time per day that I could, but some days, because I was studying in college, I would only put in like 5 minutes, maybe even less than that. And so I tried to self-study between 2012 and I think 2014. In 2014, I then ended up stopping my learning of Spanish for a couple years, mostly because I was too busy, also because it was just too much for me to handle. Basically, it basically goes in with the fact that I was too busy with college work and I was busy with other things as well. And I didn't really rekindle this like passion for learning Spanish or languages in general until I went away to Tenerife in 2015 with some friends of mine. When I went away to Tenerife, I tried my best to speak Spanish. Surprise, surprise, the knowledge I had wasn't that great. It was difficult. There was one particular night that I had where I was drunk and I was speaking with someone else in Spanish, very broken and poor Spanish, but we were able to communicate still. And that sort of rekindled my love for like language learning in general, but especially for Spanish. And I thought to myself at the time, if only I had stuck with Spanish over the last couple of years, maybe by this point my Spanish would have actually been really decent, because by that point it would have been, I don't know, 5 or 6 years or something since I started studying in school. And so I was a little bit disappointed with myself, even though I started trying to learn this language 6 years prior to this incident. And I just thought to myself, when I get back home, I need to start actually studying properly. And I really want to become like a decent Spanish speaker. I wanted to start studying this language properly. I wanted to try and study how to study languages, essentially. And so I came back home and I spent a few more years just basically using Duolingo. And Duolingo was basically the only thing I used for a long time. I think for the next 3 years, between 2015 to 2018, give or take, I forget exactly when, but something along those lines, 2015 to maybe 2019, I was just purely using Duolingo, maybe a little bit of Memrise, maybe a little bit of like whatever else I could find, but these were the 2 main apps I was using, and out of those 2, mostly Duolingo as well. And I completed the Duolingo Spanish tree, and I remember having like 100 and something day streak on Duolingo, which at the time I thought was like really good. And I remember that specifically being in 2017 at a particular place where I was working at the time. It was like a DIY store that I was working at, and basically I remember being proud of it and telling everyone like, yo, look at this, like 100 days in a row I was learning Spanish, and like I'm getting better every single day and I feel like I'm learning. And realistically, like every time I had to like recall the language and actually have to produce it, it was difficult for me to actually produce any kind of Spanish. Yeah, it was just like difficult. And so I was thinking to myself, how long until I'm able to actually know this language? How long until I can actually speak it? Little did I know that like I wasn't training myself to actually learn this language in that way. I was just training to answer Duolingo stupid questions and answers, and I was basically training myself to just react quickly to pick one of the 4 options kind of thing. So in 2019, I'm pretty sure 2019 was the year, it was in the August of 2019, I saw a video on my YouTube channel, and it was suggested on my YouTube channel, and it was to a channel called Robin McPherson's. I think that's how you pronounce it. Apologies if I pronounced it wrong. But Robin McPherson's, he's basically a YouTube polyglot, if you'd like to say that. Like he can speak about 9 languages or so, and to pretty high levels to my knowledge as well. And I'd never watched his channel before, and the video was basically around comprehensible input. And I watched this particular video, and it basically spoke about how we learn languages through comprehensible input. We learn languages through a lot of reading, a lot of listening. And I thought to myself, that's really interesting, because I remember years ago in school, my English teacher told me that the reason that the Polish kids in our school at the time had a decent amount of English, like their level of English was quite formal, was because they read a lot, as opposed to like just speaking and like picking up the slang. They were reading a lot, and so whenever they could speak, they were able to produce like quite formal words. I specifically remember my English teacher telling me that when I was maybe 15, 14, something like that. And it always stuck with me because she said, why do you think like the smart kids in school always read books? The smart kids read books because they retain the knowledge more, because they're reading a lot. And it's the same for when you're learning a language. If you're learning another language, read a lot in that language and you'll retain the information, and over time you'll retain the words and information, phrases, and it just helps you learn languages. So when I watched this video by Robin, it just clicked and I was like, that's what I need to do. I've tried it once or twice before, but because I'd only tried it once or twice and not over a long period of time, I didn't know if it was working. I wasn't exactly getting comprehensible input. I was just reading words I didn't understand what they meant, and that has like very little input in regards to like how much you remember. And so from this one video, I started watching more and more videos from this YouTube channel, Robin McPherson's. From there, I actually started finding out other YouTube polyglots as well on the platform. Like from one thing to another, I went from not being able to understand or know how to self-study a language and just sort of winging it a little bit into, I now know that I need to do comprehensible input, and I need to read a lot, and I need to listen a lot. And that's where I then shifted from Duolingo into this, because by the time I'd finished the Duolingo tree, I expected to be good at the language. I expected, okay, now that I've completed this, I should be good at the language, right? I should be able to understand by listening. And I thought it was a very, very much like, complete this section right here, and then you can move over to the next section, and then once you've done this, you can move to the next. So I thought you complete like Duolingo, and then you can move on into watching, I don't know, TV in the language. And once you can do that, and once you're good at that, you can then move on into speaking with people in the language. But all of these things mingle together. All of these things aren't linear. They mix together. So you could do a little bit of Duolingo, maybe, or apps in general, let's say, but you need to also do your reading and listening. You need to also watch your Netflix or YouTube in the target language you're trying to learn. You need to also do like other things as well, like speak to people, etc. And slowly over time, I started to become really familiar with this, and just watching all these YouTube polyglots and like watching the videos from the catalog on their YouTube channels. And I just completely changed the way that I learn languages, from a real minimal effort learning via Duolingo, which wasn't even learning. It really let me down when I completed the tree. I felt like I'd wasted so many years of my life just using Duolingo, when instead of using Duolingo, I could have used that time to read. I could have used that time to, on different apps that are more useful. I could have used that time to speak to natives. I could have used that time for anything else. And the only thing that Duolingo gave me really was probably a little bit of motivation to continue when I felt a little bit like lacking in the motivation. Otherwise, Duolingo wasted my time. And I try and tell people now, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just focus all on Duolingo, or for that matter, on any one particular resource or app or TV show or whatever it may be. You need to try and make it varied so that you're doing a bit of learning here, a bit of learning here, a bit of learning there. If you do that successfully, it will help you so much more learning a language. And I proved it to myself. It took me maybe 11 to 12 years to learn Spanish to like a certain degree. I don't know, maybe an A2 or B1, let's say. And then it took me a year, maybe less than a year, to learn Polish to that sort of similar sort of range, let's say A2 for the sakes of argument. It took me less than a year, probably 6 months, to learn Polish, a way harder language for almost anyone in the world, to learn in 6 months that I did with Spanish that I learned in 12 years. And that's because of the method that I used to learn. It wasn't good for me. It's not good for really anyone, in my opinion. And the takeaway from it was that I needed to find the method to learn a language that worked for me. And the method that worked for me was reading, listening, and most important of all for anyone learning a language is to enjoy the process of what you're doing. When I was doing Duolingo, I wasn't fully enjoying what I was doing. I was just trying to please the owl, as it were, making sure that no owl means he wasn't going to come kill my family or whatever. I was just doing the daily streaks because it was reminding me on my phone, you need to do your daily 5 minutes or whatever. And so I would go on there, do my daily 5 minutes. And then that's my language learning done for the day. I go straight from this very quick, low minimum effort Spanish into watching TV for 6 hours in English, for example. that's not enough. You need to put an effort in order to learn a language. And when I finally discovered this, it was like a light bulb had gone off in my head. I remember my English teacher telling me all those years ago that actually you need to read a lot in order to learn really anything, regardless of whether it's a language or not. But reading in another language especially really helps you so much. And the fact that my English teacher knew this all those years ago tells me that the idea has been around for a while. And now that I've got more into learning languages, I realized that actually the person who sort of made this theory like a thing was Stephen Krashen. I don't know when he made his theory or whatever, but he basically like discovered this through one way or another, and he just put it out there, and that's what most people base their language learning comprehensible input theory on. Steve Kaufman also, he just always learned languages through this way anyway. Most people know him anyway, but he's like 75 or so, and his whole life he's been learning languages through mostly reading books and through speaking, because that's what he's done in his life. He's been traveling, and when he traveled, he just liked to read on the culture and everything. And for him, it worked as well. And now he's made Link, which is an app that I use every single day to learn languages for comprehensible input and also incomprehensible input as well. I think it's good to vary it, but I'll make another video on that anyway. Main thing for this video I wanted to talk about was just the amount of time that I wasted learning or trying to learn Spanish, thinking I was doing the right thing, and I just needed to be guided towards the right way. And thanks to Robin McPherson's for the video that I saw on his channel and for having the clickbaity enough title or thumbnail for me to actually go, I want to click on that, let's click on it, and maybe we can get back into language learning. And the way he presented himself in the video was that I actually took his word for it basically, and I believed everything that was in that video, and it paid off big time, because I'm here 3 years later after watching that video, and I've come back into language learning, and I'm such a huge fan of learning languages and other culture and everything. And at one point I just thought that this isn't for me. And since I watched that video, it's given me so much motivation. It's told me, since I put things into practice, that actually you can learn languages. You just need to basically learn through the right methods. And that's just through a lot of input. So my advice for any of you watching this video right now, if you're still watching, first of all, thank you so much. I appreciate you all for watching. Honestly, do not use one single particular app or resource in general. Please do vary it up a bit. 100% I would say try not to use Duolingo all that much. Feel free to use Duolingo. It does have its benefits. Again, I can outline in another video because I don't want this video to be too long. But if you use Duolingo because it's free and you can't afford anything else, I'm going to make a video soon on everything you can do in order to learn a language for free, everything you can do to maximize the programs that you already use or the services that you already use. For example, YouTube, Spotify, that maybe you do pay for, but if you're already using them, you can 100% use them for better outcomes in regards to language learning. Just a quick tip right now, subtitles, listen to the language when you're watching Netflix, or if you're on Spotify, listen to podcasts in the other language or music in the other language. But I'll make another video talking about all the things you can do for free anyway in order to learn a language, at least all the things that I do myself, which, you know, basically says that language learning doesn't have to be expensive. Just please do not think that learning a language is just going on Duolingo and spending 5 minutes a day trying to learn a language and eventually it will just work, because it really will not work. Take my advice on this one. I spent years of my life wasting my time thinking I was learning and I wasn't. I do use Duolingo occasionally, every now and then, mostly for learning the scripts of other languages. That's how I learnt this hiragana and katakana in Japanese. However, I don't believe in its longevity, if that makes sense. And I also believe that Duolingo is better for people who are more at the intermediate stage, who want to learn more vocabulary. You go back to Duolingo when you're a bit more advanced in language, and then you start learning all this random, weird, not that well used vocabulary, because there was a lot of words on Duolingo that I just used that I never would then use outside, especially as a beginner. You want to learn things that you want to actually repeat as a beginner. If you want any more advice, any more help on top of what I've just spoken about today, please put down in the comment section below. I would appreciate it if you would like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below of any queries or even suggestions for future videos. I'd be happy to answer all of that. And also go down below in the description. I've got my Instagram down there if you'd like to follow me on there. Not particularly language learning related, but it's just if you want to follow what I'm up to. yeah, go over there. I'd appreciate a follow over there as well. But with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching, guys. And I don't know how many videos I'm going to be making in the next few weeks, but I'll do my best to make some kind of content a little bit like once a week or something. It just really depends on how busy I'm going to be, which is probably going to be really busy. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch all of you in the next video. Until then, stay safe. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.